Hey, what's up everyone? So, it's finally beginning. The highly anticipated series of class guides is finally kicking off. People have been asking about this for a very long time, and I apologize it's taken us so long to get to start doing these videos, but here we are. Better late than never. So, as I am playing the Shadowlash class, which has now become Darkblade, I will be starting off with a video about the base class Shadowlash, and then I will be following up with a video about Darkblade. So, Shadowlash is a very interesting DPS class, and in theory, the overall assassin class, this class line as Shadowlash, etc., does have the theoretical highest DPS potential in the game. Now, if you're playing without being a whale and pushing everything to the absolute min-maxed theoretical levels, all classes are pretty much going to be equally viable and fun, but just pointing it out that in theory, the class with the highest DPS potential is the assassin class. So let's start by taking a look, because I think there's many guides that you can take a look at just to understand what to set, but I think it's more important to understand why. So let's try to analyze this class together. So Shadowlash, which is the base assassin class, can be understood as a core skill abuser. That's the only way I can put it. This is a core skill abusing class. Everything about your build is centering around this skill right here in the middle, which is cross slash. This is your bread and butter of everything that happens in this class. So let's start looking at all of these skills, because what I have equipped here is the best in slot loadout of skills. Maybe not the best in slot. Don't look at the levels right now. These levels are what I have for my Darkblade, and I've simply equipped the skills over. But if I was still playing the base class, this 85 would be on the cross slash, for example, because this is the most important skill, but we'll touch on that later. So let's read cross slash for a moment. So cross slash, deal 2 hits of shadow damage equal to 234% attack, and in the next 4 seconds, convert basic attacks to shadow damage, and restore 30 energy per shadow damage dealt. Now, this is everything that this build is centered on right here. So for those who don't know, I'll show this as well. So those who are saying, oh, well, what is energy? So this is your core skill here, and you see this blue bar that's constantly going around and filling. This is your energy bar, and when your energy bar reaches max, your character uses the core skill. You can see it kind of snaps because we're generating energy very quickly, especially after we use skills. You'll see here, watch the core skill after we use these 3 skills, and you'll understand basically what this class is all about. And there it goes. At least that's kind of annoying. The mobs are dying too quickly to fully show it off. But basically, when you cast these skills, your core skill just goes crazy and starts spamming like wild. Anyway, so everything about this build is around cross slash, and when you have this basic attack dealing shadow damage, you restore 30 energy per shadow damage dealt. Now this basically allows you to completely spam your core attack. You also have, as you level up, these additional benefits here, which are all great. But let's move on to why I have this set of skills to support this particular core skill. I'm trying my best to explain it. Sorry if I'm like slowing down and jumping around. It's just, this is the first guide video about a class. It's going to be the most scuffed, and then everyone after is going to get better and better. So bear with me. So the first tactical skill that we use with this build is Shadow Acceleration. And I'm going to read the skill, and then we're going to discuss why it's good for cross slash. So upon casting, increase attack frequency by 70% for 7 seconds. If the core skill is of the shadow element, additionally restore 100% energy, plus increase shadow damage by 10.8% plus 160 for the duration. Now, hopefully I don't need to explain why this is absolutely phenomenal, but I will explain it so you understand why. So upon casting, increase attack frequency by 70% for 7 seconds. Now this is going to increase the speed at which you deal basic attacks. Plus, since the core skill is of the shadow element, cross slash is a shadow skill, you're also going to immediately get 100% energy. So the second the skill cast, you get 1 cross slash immediately. And then because we have in cross slash this here converts basic attacks to shadow damage and restore 30 energy per shadow damage dealt, that means when you have a 70% increase in attack frequency, that means your basic attacks are going to go absolutely wild and deal a lot of shadow damage and generate a lot of energy, allowing you to absolutely spam cross slash. So this synergy is exceptional. This is an absolute essential skill to have, and it really makes your cross slash damage go absolutely wild. So the next tactical skill that goes with this build is After Image Technique. So after casting, conjure an after image that deals an additional hit of 126% attack plus 320 shadow damage for each skill damage dealt, lasting 5.5 seconds. This is a very good ability. Now, obviously, as far as the benefits of this build, this Shadow Acceleration is like absolutely essential. This one is also very good, but less essential than Shadow Acceleration. But still, this is the best tactical in this slot. So the after image, it's very, very cool ability, and you can see there, you can see the after image, it's basically having like a shadow clone of some kind with you, and it does deal quite a lot of damage. And so when you cast this and you start spamming cross slash, your clone is also going to start spamming cross slash, and that's why the damage output is absolutely absurd. So very important skill, and basically just allows you to double up on cross slashes for 5 seconds after you cast your tactical skills. The next ability is Return to Simplicity. Now, Return to Simplicity, let's read the description together. Upon casting, increase core skill damage by 92%. Keep in mind, I just want to mention, all of these numbers that you're reading here, 10%, 70%, these are all based on the level and star level of all these abilities. So these may be slightly less if you're just starting out or if you're a lower level. Just keep that in mind. So Return to Simplicity, upon casting, increase core skill damage by 92% and reduce non-core skill damage by 80% for 7 seconds. Casting any tactical skill 1 second after activation will end Return to Simplicity early. Now, this is another very, very important skill for this build. I don't need to explain why. We've just said that this is a core skill abusing class, and here we have a skill that almost doubles the damage of your core skill. That's insane. Now, some people might say, oh my god, but you're reducing non-core skill damage by 80%. Well, isn't this such a big deal? The simple answer is no. Your core skill does such a big percentage of your damage that it really... It doesn't matter that you're nerfing your other non-core skill damage by 80% because your core skill does such a huge bulk of your damage. And I think the easiest way for me to show that, I think if I just go into maybe if I go into a rift, let me try this. I'm gonna see if I can go into a rift with mercenaries to see if I can show you the damage loadout, the damage breakdown. I have to do this, don't I? One sec. My presets, pre-class change, use for the rifts. There you go. So I'm going to make sure it doesn't automatically swap my thingy here. Okay, let's see. Make sure it's all good. Melomon. Yeah, it's still using the right one. Okay. Talents. Yeah, all good. And I haven't, you see, even though I'm a higher level, I haven't unlocked these talents yet. I'm keeping it at the ones you would have when you are, in fact, pre-class change. But I will explain that when I get to talents. So let's see if I can get enough damage dealt that I can show you a breakdown of the class's damage output. So there you have it. Cross Slash, quickly followed by Crescent Rush, which I will explain after. So let's see, we're doing a bit more damage here, a bit more damage here. I'm going to check again. Yeah, so there's the two abilities that are dealing the most damage. There you have it. And you can see everything else is basically irrelevant. I've already exposed the best passive skill. But anyway, this is extremely important, and by the way, it's a very useful place for you to see how your damage output of your class works. You can see a breakdown of, I'm not going to claim that right now, but you can see a breakdown when you click on view details. You can see a breakdown of all the different damage sources of your build. So here we have Cross Slash followed by Crescent Rush, but really the bulk of damage does come from Cross Slash. So anyway, now we understand increasing your core skill damage by nearly 100%. Very, very, very good tactical skill. Sorry, like I said, I'm jumping around a bit, but I hope this is still helpful. I know some of you prefer to have maybe a shorter, more optimized version, but if you're really looking for a fast explanation, you can just literally pause the video as soon as I show the skills, jump to when I show Melomon, jump to when I show talents, and boom, you're good to go. So let me waffle for a bit. That's how I explain things. So now let's talk about the passive skills here and understand why these are essential to the build. So starting with Shadowblade Splash. Now, Shadowblade Splash, whenever Cross Slash deals damage, it will deal 45% of its damage as shadow damage to enemies around the target. And also increases shadow damage by nearly 27%. Now, this is a very, very, very good skill as well. Not primarily for the top part of the ability, but because of the huge shadow damage percentage increase. So when I go into my stats, you can actually see that reflected here. Shadow damage is 29%, and a large number that is coming from this skill here. So very essential for the shadow damage. This will increase your damage in AoE a little bit, but again, it's not a primary damage source here. It is just like a nice bonus to increase the AoE potential of Cross Slash and increase shadow damage a lot. Now we have Shadow Cleave, which is the next best in slot passive. So Shadow Cleave, when dealing shadow damage, there is a 55% chance to deal an additional shadow damage equal to 10% of your attack, and increase the target's shadow damage taken from the player by 27% for 3 seconds. Now again, very good skill. Not necessarily because of the top part, which is a nice bonus, but anything that increases damage taken, damage dealt is huge. So now we just had a skill that increases 27% shadow damage dealt, and now we have a skill that increases 20% shadow damage taken. So that's 54% damage increase in 2 passive skills. That's huge. I mean, basically in Shadowlash, all of your damage is shadow damage. So these 2 skills increase all of your damage by 54%. So they're very essential. Even if their main ability is not as good, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying the main reason you have these 2 is because of the shadow damage increase. Very, very useful. Now, next we have Crescent Rush. As you saw in the damage breakdown in the Rift run I just did, Crescent Rush is no joke. This is the second highest damage dealing ability skill in your loadout after Cross Slash. So very, very important skill here. Let's read what it does. When a core skill deals shadow damage, which is for us every single core skill, basically every single attack, the core skill deals shadow damage. It is a shadow damage core skill. Unleash a sword of energy forward, dealing an additional hit of shadow damage to all enemies equal to 78.4% of the triggered damage. Plus, as a bonus, increase core skill damage by 70% and reduce non-core skill damage by 50%. So this is like a sick skill, and like if you see when I okay, yeah, it's a little chaotic. Let me see if I can it's gonna be hard for me to show it in main story, but let's see if I can show you the Crescent Slash. No, okay, it's too chaotic. Anyway, so when you use Crescent Rush on your skill bar, basically whenever you use a Cross Slash, you see these huge 2 dark Cross Slash, like a bleach move, like a Zanpakuto or something. So anyway, Crescent Rush, extremely good, the best passive for this class, and really, really essential. Very essential passive skill. Crescent Rush deals the second most damage after Cross Slash. Extremely good. Next up, you have Scavenger's Feast. Now, Scavenger's Feast is another very, very good passive skill. So every 35 hits of damage dealt, any damage, doesn't specify a specific element, Every 35 hits of damage dealt with the same element as the core skill increase the damage of that element by 6.4% for 15 seconds up to 5 times. So yes, this stacks 5 times, so 6.4% times 5 is over 30% more shadow damage bonus for us. That's amazing. And you may think, well, 35 hits, well, that must take a long time, right? But I don't know if I can, let's see if you can see. Here's the stacks right here, 24. I want you to look at this 24 and look at how quickly that goes up when we start dealing damage. Boom. Oh my god, do you see that? Look, 31, boom, boom, boom. We just got 5 stacks in like 2.5 seconds. So let's see it go again. Boom, done. Another stack. So this gives you an idea actually just how fast all of the basic attacks are going out. Like, you're getting probably 50 plus stacks a second or something like that if you're attacking. Obviously, this is short fights, which is blasting a few mobs here, but when you're in a long fight, this just goes crazy and it just churns out. You're basically going to be at 5 stacks almost all the time in a fight because of how fast this stacks up when you're running this build properly. So this is another very, very important skill. You basically have permanent 30% increase to shadow damage as a result of this. Very, very good skill. And then the final skill is arguably the least important of the entire loadout, but also still the best for that slot. That is Shadow Assault. So when casting core skill, deal shadow damage equal to 245% attack to all enemies and has a 60% chance to trigger an explosion, dealing an additional hit of 100% of the base damage as shadow damage to the target. So again, this is just basically a nice skill to have because our entire build is centered around shadow damage. It's just, you know, a nice add-on to have a little bit more AoE, but it's not like, you know, when I do the damage breakdown, I don't know if you can see it here because it's not much, but it's well, I guess it's good in AoE. I mean, I take that back. It's good in AoE and depends on the circumstances, but like in a boss fight, for example, you will find that Shadow Assault is relatively low down on the damage list. But still a very good skill, still best in the slot here, but compared to like Crescent Rush, for example, this is a lower importance, but still worth having. When I say importance, you have to understand that everything I have here is important. This whole loadout is important. I'm just talking about what benefits your overall damage output the most. So that's basically skills. And I'm sorry, I've just given this super long-winded explanation, but that's everything you need to know about skills. Now let's move on to the next aspect of the build, which is talents. So for your talents, it's very easy. Art of Blade, full left side, done. In base class, you can only be able to get up to Shadow Acceleration, and then this next section here unlocks at class change, which you don't need right now. You wouldn't have access to this, so we're not going to talk about it. So if you look at this, the reason why we go left side is because everything on the left side is focused on cross slash. So the top one here, solo duel. Within 15 seconds after starting battle, increase the damage of cross slash by 30%. Brilliant, very, very good. I don't need to talk too much more about that. More damage for cross slash, yay. 30 seconds after the start of battle, cross slash ignores 50% of the enemy's defense. Again, very, very good. Anything that ignores defense is a very powerful ability. And finally, the last skill you will have in the base class is Shadow Acceleration. For the duration of Shadow Acceleration, increase core skill shadow damage by 20%. Now, Shadow Acceleration is this skill here, which I've said is so good. So while this is active for 7 seconds, you additionally get this 20% more core skill shadow damage. So it just, you see how the synergy in this class works. You're just stacking on stacking on stacking shadow damage up. It's just everything synergizes so well. And in fact, I would say arguably, from having now played Darkblade quite a bit, the synergies in the talents and the skills for Shadowlash are way better than for Darkblade. Like, there's obviously a proper skill loadout for Darkblade, but for Shadowlash, everything just really works well together. It's like they really thought that out nicely. Now, your second talent tree that you will run is Forging Foundation. Increase attack frequency by 5%. We already know why increasing attack frequency is good, because this gives you more basic attacks, therefore more energy equals more cross slash spamming. And again, more attack frequency here Very nice bonus Fury. When dealing a basic attack, unleash Fury, dealing an additional hit of 500% of attack as true damage to all enemies, triggers once every 10 seconds. So this is just like a nice little bonus, not necessarily like the main reason you pick this tree, which is mostly for the attack frequency increase. And then finally, this very nice bonus here, within 0.5 seconds after dealing basic attack damage, increase all damage by 4%. Now this is nice because you're basically spamming basic attacks all the time, so even if it says 0.5 seconds, that doesn't matter. You're still going to get a huge damage bonus to your core skill, which is the most important. So this is your best talents. Art of Blade, everything on the left side here until second acceleration, and then Forging Foundation. Hope you understand all of that, and it's clear. Okay. So that's that so far. Now, let's see, what should we talk about next? Now, I've already made a video talking about Melomon, going into detail about what's the best for DPS, and Shadowlash is no exception. It uses the standard best in slot DPS loadout. So your best Melomon by far is Demon Hound. It is no question. It is the best. Done. The reason it's the best is when triggering a crit hit or determination, increase damage by 72%. When triggering both crit and determination, the damage bonus stacks. That's no joke. I don't need to explain why that's an insane ability. Then your best passive skills or special skills are going to be Your Turn, which also comes from Demon Hound, Echo, and Sharpness of Claw. Now, we've already established in several videos that any source that gives damage increase is what you should be aiming for. So these are your 3 special skills that you would use. This one obviously is locked until a much higher level of evolution, but in theory this would be your best in slot if you ever did run this class at a higher level for whatever reason. So at the lower levels you would run Your Turn plus Echo. This is the best skills. When it comes to moves, you're basically supporting your stat priorities, which I will explain now. So moves, these moves, the Melomon moves, you're basically going to put whatever you can to benefit your primary stat target. So I'm going to explain what those are now. First off, attack is an extremely important stack. Try to get as much extremely important stat. Try to get as much wow, I can't speak right now. Give me a second. Whew. Try to get as much attack as possible. There you go. My God, speaking is so difficult today. Very important. Increases all of your skill damage, so very important. Number 2 is crit and determination. You should ideally aim to have your crit and determination between about 30 and 35%, ideally at that 35% mark. The reason you don't want to go higher is because you are somewhat subject to what, diminishing returns. So even if you start getting like 50% of each, you will not necessarily feel a notable increase in the amount of crit and determination you get. And even at 30%, 35%, it practically almost feels like 100%. You're going to be getting loads of crits and loads of determinations, and that's why we say keep these at this level, and then once they're at 30 to 35%, start investing into other stats like haste, more attack, even some mastery, and of course crit damage. So when you look at my Melomon here, for example, I have crit damage in the attack slot. In the defensive slot, I have evasion or HP. You could run evasion, it's probably best, to be honest. I have an HP as well, but probably 3 times evasion is the best defensive stats because we're a melee DPS. You're gonna get little hits from lots of enemies all the time. So if you have evasion, it basically allows you to completely avoid taking damage. So very useful to have, probably more so than HP. And then basically your next moves are going to be determination, endurance, plus whatever your build is missing. So here, for example, I'm running attack because I don't need more crit right now. So I'm running this attack. Well, I might actually change this to crit because I realized I only have 32 and I want 35. So maybe I'll change this to crit, etc. So you basically, you're running whatever is the best for your loadout. So if I was, say, lacking in determination right now, I would drop one of my crit damage and run a determination move instead so I could get higher determination, and so on and so forth. So even though there is a theoretical best in slot, which is 3 times crit damage, 3 times evasion, 3 times determination, endurance, and 3 times whatever you're missing to balance out your stats, you're always going to be going on whatever gets you closest to the ideal build, which is 35% crit determination, as much attack as possible, haste, mastery, and I forgot to mention, of course, accuracy, which you want to have at the required level to deal 100% accuracy to the dragon. That's right now, I believe. It changes with the higher dragon level. I think I'm even at 103%. I think I'm still a bit too low, right? Let me check this quickly. Yeah, so I'm at, even though I have 103% accuracy, because of the level difference to the dragon, I'm only 97.85. So that goes to show you need quite a bit of accuracy in order to offset the level difference to the dragon and deal as close to 100% as you can to avoid the dragon evading your attacks. So that's pretty much it. The only other things I want to add, by the way, okay, yeah, I have to finish on an important note so that my tanks and healers don't complain at me, and that is, yes, your primary focus is DPS. Yes, you can mostly play this class on auto and just deal as much damage as possible. However, you do actually have some utility that you need to understand. And that utility, if my game will stop freezing, is you have Sudden Kick. If spellcast, so basically what this works is sometimes when you're fighting against a boss or any mob, you will see a blue/purple casting bar going underneath their HP bar. If you use Sudden Kick while that bar is filling up, you will interrupt that cast. Now this can only be used on the blue cast bar. If you use a gray cast bar, that means it can't be interrupted. So this is important. There are going to be fights where you as a DPS are expected to interrupt abilities. Now, a lot of people I've seen in world chat, I know they're memeing, saying, oh, the tank has to interrupt. And the answer to that is no. If the tank is really overgeared and can drop one of his defensive abilities to run an interrupt, fine. That's okay. But most of the time, I'm sorry to say, DPS, you should be running an interrupt on fights that need an interrupt and take the hit to your damage. Sorry, that's just how it is. The next important utility ability in your class is physically Dispel. So this is a bit less common, but there are going to be some bosses and abilities that gain a buff that require you to dispel that buff. So if you see, for example, there's like, for example, let's say a condition that a boss gets like an enrage, and if that can be dispelled when the boss gets the enrage buff and you see it pop up under their bar, you will cast this ability immediately, which will strip that buff from them and stop them from potentially one-shotting your tank. So another important utility to have in the fights that you needed. And again, you just take the DPS hit to avoid, you know, ruining the entire run for your party. Now, if you ask me of these three tactical skills, which is the one would you swap out for a which is the one would you swap out for the interrupt or the dispel? You know, to be honest with you, probably I'd swap out After Image Technique. Of these three options, you don't want to swap out Shadow Acceleration, and the core damage increase of Return to Simplicity is really important, and I would probably swap out After Image Technique. I might be wrong about that. Maybe someone would say, hey, that's not right. I've done the math and it's this. If you know the math and you can correct me on this, please write it in the comments below. But in my experience, I think if you're going to have to swap a utility skill here, swap it with After Image Technique. So I think that's basically everything about Shadowlash. Yeah, I think that's a wrap. Now, I do apologize. Like I said, this video is pretty like yapping. I'm just like yapping about this. I'll try to be a bit more optimized in my future class videos, but this is, you know, it's the first time for everything, okay? Anyway, so thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you feel a little more confident about the class, understand it a bit better, and able to deal a hell of a lot more damage, because it is a very fun class with a lot of damage output, and there's just something really satisfying about seeing your character absolutely spamming cross slashes and having these Crescent rush blades flying everywhere. It's a very visually satisfying class to play. So anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the guide, and you know, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and join the Discord if you haven't already. The link's in the description down below. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully Darkblade class guide's coming soon. Watch out for it. Thanks, guys.